and I hope you're really excited. As you can see, we have new scope. This was one of the key things that we heard. A lot of people thought that the field area should be included in the design process, and we're excited to say that it now is, and we'll dive into these areas. We're going to start with the courts and playground area, and then move into the passive area and field area, and then finally talk about a few options for additional design elements if funding allows, as we develop these plans into more detailed construction documents and understand the cost estimate and the implications a little better. Next slide, please. The current plan, as you can see, really doesn't relocate anything in any major way. The courts are still along Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard. The play area is still at the peak on Walnut Avenue. There's still a large open passive recreation area through the heavily wooded core of the park area. And we're looking to replace the existing field with a synthetic multi-use field while improving multiple amenities throughout the site and creating a much more accessible space for people with multiple abilities. So as you can see here, every route that's marked in orange will be considered an ADA accessible path. Next slide, please. The first area we want to discuss is the court area. And obviously this is one of the key components to the park and to our project. And you know, from a lot of the discussions that we heard, the biggest thing that people were scared of was us moving, removing, or destroying the spirit of the space. And I think that what we heard most was, let's keep the terraces, let's keep that sense of accomplishment and moving up through skill levels and design levels. Through discussion with Coach Wilson, we heard that there was a latent desire to have a full size, and when I say full size, I mean college or professional size basketball court, if possible, to see if any sort of exhibition games or other type events could be held. So we're working to develop a full size 94-foot by 50-foot basketball court at the top terrace instead of the standard, 84-foot basketball court. We're also looking to improve the spectator amenities around the site, including bleachers, scoreboards, improved LED lighting, and improved access to all the courts, so that there will be an ADA accessible route to every court from both Martin Luther King Jr. Boulevard and from inside the park. It will also be close to a formalized barbecue and grilling area, which will be located between the field and the courts themselves. And then there's also discussion, and we'll get into this a little further near the end of the presentation, about a collaboration with local artists for doing murals on the existing and to be refinished terrace seat walls between the courts. Next slide, please. For those of you who have been to previous meetings, many of these images aren't new to you, but for those of you who are new to the meetings, or this is your first meeting, you can see here what we're looking to do. We're looking to integrate bleachers and other amenities in a concise and cohesive manner, so it's not just bleachers in the grass. We're looking to include terrace seating on some of the hillsides because, as everyone knows, this park is very hilly and steep. Improve the court lighting. We're looking at an LED sports lighting, which is Boston standard now, as well as improving the basketball court surfaces and surrounds themselves. Beyond that, I think the other things that we heard was that, you know, improving the surfaces of the courts, improving the gameplay, and improving the spectator amenities so that more people can enjoy the events from the sidelines as well, were the key takeaways that we've heard so far. Next slide, please. With that, I want to open it up for discussion. We're going to try for 5 minutes, and if I cut you off, we'll try to finish all comments as they come in, but we'll try to wrap this up around 6:29, and we'll move on to the next section.
And we've now changed the settings so everyone should be able to unmute themselves if they have specific thoughts or comments on the courts.
So my name is Shauna Bryant. I live in Grove Hall. My nieces and nephews live across the street on Kensington Street. And I'm just curious around the seating, the bleacher seating and those tables and chairs where there'll be a barbecue area. Is that all just cement or is it a little bit more friendly material?
Right now, I think we're showing it as cement. Typically, what we can do with those spaces is work with the pattern, material, and color of the cement to make it feel more well put down than just a simple pathway or a park. Going to a higher level material, things like stone dust are often a maintenance problem for the city of Boston, and also a cost concern if you look at things like unit pavers and items like that. So there's a maintenance and cost concern with that. So
in addition, both of those can sometimes cause ADA concerns with access as well. But I think where Mike's going with that is even if the material is concrete, there are ways to make that concrete feel special at each of those gathering nodes. Is that a good way to put it, Mike?
Yeah, special or comfortable is what I'm thinking, not even special.
Right. Yeah. Yep.
And then with the barbecue area, I don't know if the picture showed it or I didn't see it. How many like barbecue grills are in that space? Is it 2? And then three table setting areas around each of them? Is that what I'm seeing on this photo here?
It's not fully detailed out yet. Currently, we're planning for 5 barbecue areas, actual barbecues. And then the seating that you see there, I think we're holding 5 total cafe style tables.
Okay, thank you.
I think under the category of making it comfortable too, and I appreciate Shauna's comments, there's an opportunity to do some tree planting around the perimeter, which makes the space feel a little bit softer and allows some shade to be lended on that paved space as well.
Good evening. My name is Alfreda Harris, Shelburne Community Council, Inc. And first I want to let you know, Lauren, that Dennis Wilson will not be able to join us tonight.
Oh, that's too bad.
Unfortunately, he forgot that basketball season started today at school, so he had practice.
Well, that I understand for him that absolutely takes precedence with basketball. Thank you for letting us know, Ms. Harris.
Yeah, he asked me to do that. In regards to the field, the community had talked about the walking track. Is that still in the plans, I hope?
Yep, okay. We will get to that. I think is that the next topic, Mike, is the field? Or it's one of the next few?
It's a few topics away, but there is a walking path.
Okay. In regards to the basketball courts, that's where we're at right now, right?
Yes.
The seating, what material is that? Is that concrete?
The bleachers will be a mix. In some areas, we'll be looking to put in concrete bleachers, and in other areas, we'll be looking to do a more standard aluminum bleacher.
Aluminum, okay. In regards to the murals, I know we haven't quite put that all together yet. But one of the things that we wanted to talk about in regards to the Roxbury Basketball Association, which is one of the leagues that really brought I call it Washington Park, Malcolm X Park to life, as well as the Boston Neighborhood Basketball League, which is a league that was put together by the city of Boston for the younger kids. So those are 2 of the things that I hope you make a note of, that as the meetings further go about the murals or whatever, that those 2 are at least included. In regards to the lighting, that whole area is going to be relit. Okay, correct. Sounds good. And the access, so that folks don't have to jump down into the courts, they'll be able to walk into the courts.
Correct. From Martin Luther King's side, right. Exactly.
Okay, very good.
Back from both sides, all the courts will be accessible.
And regarding, I'm sorry, Ms. Harris, go ahead.
No, I'm finished
my name Okay. My name is Norman Stembridge, and in regards to the courts themselves,
Mhm.
especially if you're going to expand one of them to be able to accommodate out certain activities, what type of equipment with the backboards? I'm sorry, I can't remember what they're currently used for the backboards. If they're metal, if they could be some type of plexiglass material.
Yeah, that's a good question. The standard for Boston Parks when we renovate courts is to use a clear plexi, which is like, I think like the acrylic backboard that you're talking about.
And then the rims that would be attached, I know, they've advanced since I've been on those courts, whether they're the breakaway takedown rims or they're the regular type that used to be on most courts, those type of things.
Mike, you guys have looked at our specs for that more recently than I have. I'm going to let you answer that one.
I don't remember off the top of my head, but I do know that typically they're more advanced and they're usually breakaway. I just don't want to promise it if I don't have it in front of me.
Yeah, I think it's safe to say it's a pretty high performing rim and backboard system. It's been improved a lot over the last couple of decades. And I think it serves communities at a pretty high level. I think we have typically knock on with the breakaway because it's, if people are prone to hanging on it, it's constantly flexing. Lauren, do you know whether I know there's been attempts to use it, but I think we've kind of gotten away from the breakaway.
I don't remember using one recently.
Yeah.
So I think you're right.
Yeah.
Well, presently, the ones that are there now, they have been held up pretty good.
Yeah,
They
okay.
get a lot of
That's
usage,
good to hear.
So,
Yeah, and it's definitely
Yeah.
heavily used.
mhm.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any other last thoughts on the courts before we jump to our next topic?
I have
Yes,
a
I do.
question. Oh,
I do.
oh,
I
hi.
did have a question. Oh,
Yes, hi. Good evening. My husband and I, Michelle Bernardes and Rudolph Bernardes, we live right down the street on Dale Street. And my question was about having a backboard there, tennis for the backboard. But I see that you're going to have that. And my husband also has a question as well.
Yes, what side, what end are those two tennis courts gonna be on? Are they gonna be on the swimming pool side or are they going towards the playground side where they're at
Same
now?
place, same
They're
place,
in
right?
place. So they're right
The
at the same.
playground side.
Oh, same place.
Right. Mhm.
Mhm.
Okay, I'm all excited about this,
Good.
Good.
That's great
Excellent.
to hear.
especially the lighting part. You know,
Perfect.
when do construction supposed to start?
We're hoping it's going to be this summer, assuming everything continues to work okay with COVID and being able to start when we think we can, if we don't have another construction shutdown. And the thought is that with all the scope, it will be spring or summer of 2022 that we'll reopen everything. Because it's a lot of work.
Oh, yeah, it's time for that part to be redone anyway.
Exactly. Was there?
I have a
Oh, sorry.
question about,
I have a question. I'm sorry. No, go ahead.
I just want to just add one thing. I take my grandkids up there and, I know now they have, a lot of guys come up there and they do a lot of drinking, they break glasses everywhere. So my prayer is that they maintain it and they keep it clean and they keep people from, going up there and being destructive. That's
agree.
my prayer, my hope.
Let me add,
That's gonna
let me just add a couple of something
Yeah,
real quick.
go ahead.
I'm glad that folks from the community are very happy about the renovations and all. And at some point, we do plan to mobilize the immediate community just to talk about taking our park back.
Yes. And accountability, responsibility.
That's right. If you don't use your park, anything might happen.
Yes.
But we've talked, Coach Wilson and I have talked in length, and a couple of other folks in terms about bringing folk together. It's our park. Let's take care of it.
Yes.
I had a- Could we maybe do one more
I
court
have a
comment
question.
for right now?
I had a question about the park.
in terms of storage. And so just what are the plans in terms of having storage space, just because whether just being able to access if you do need to clean up the park, if you want to sweep up or do different things, there's not a lot of storage space, whether it's for equipment, whether it's for cleaning supplies, just different things like that. And if there is plans, if those are going to be with sustainable materials, because some of the storage boxes that were there were wooden, and they rot over time. And so just curious about that.
Yeah. So we're currently showing 5 storage boxes in the location of the courts. I think our understanding of the use was really more court oriented, and the idea of maybe a more general storage for community cleaning supplies, like you said, is something that we can add in and think about, or maybe if the location, on or by the courts is the right spot for it, maybe we can use one of those or rethink and retool one of those for that kind of use.
And I'm gonna, if we could jump onto our next topic, because we will be able to revisit the courts towards the end, but I do want to make sure that we are able to move on to our next topics.
Thanks, Laura. Next slide, please. And Dovey, I know you were trying to get in. We will ask you what you had to say about the courts. Elise, I'm still seeing the courts discussion. Thanks. Perfect. So the second area we wanted to discuss was the play area. And the big takeaways we had here was one, a preference for traditional play equipment. We wanted a variety of play experiences, including a lot of socializing, more caretaker seating, making this a more multi-generational space for both people, children and adults playing on it, and people gathering around it to watch their children and their families. We wanted to use the topography further. Instead of placing the playground just at the top of the hill, we wanted to use the hillside as part of the play element. And then we wanted to open up the visibility to the play area from the surrounding park so that it wasn't only seen from the very tops of the materials. The tops of the towers. We wanted it to really be more visible from the street and from other areas in the park, as well as being more visible to other areas of the park while you're in the space. Next slide, please. In the 5 to 12 playground area, we're looking to use a tower bridge play system that allows an ADA accessible route up to the second level of a 3-story traditional play tower. It includes a spiral slide, a long waving slide, multiple points of access, and a pretty open concept so that there's good visibility both in and around the space. We're also using the hillside itself as a play element, as I mentioned, including things like an embankment roller slide and climbers, as well as more integrated components like hillside stones and stone seating, as well as other seating. We also have 4 belt swings, a group swing, and spinners that include backrests, which make them more supportive for people with upper body restraint issues, so minor disabilities and disabilities can use them as well. We also wanted to note that based on the poll that we did with the children at the Higgins and Lewis School, the preferred color combination was actually based off of the color palette that you see at the bottom right. So that was really by choice of the nearby school, and that's what we're working from at this point. I think that's the major components to the 5 to 12. So next slide, please. The 2 to 5 play area tries to incorporate the same types of elements, but geared towards children that don't have the same body strength and capabilities as their older counterparts. We still have an accessible play structure that has access from on top of the hill off of the play area. Includes a smaller play structure for even younger students, rubber climbing spheres, saddle spinners, an accessible carousel, which is the item you see on the right, as well as bucket and full support swings. Again, we're looking to create a full variety of play opportunities for children, mostly of the 2 to 5 range, but even their older siblings will probably find some fun in this space. Again, using the hillside and making sure that there's plenty of caretaker access and seating both around and inside the space. Next slide, please. The next point of discussion is how we take the idea of play and add another level of that concept into the play area and break it out from the edges of that playground and into the other parts of the park. We've been talking with Omo Moses of Math Talk about the idea of an education trail. He's done similar projects at Magazine Beach and Dudley Square. And the idea being that we create a series of play elements that are based on a combination of on-site signage and ground-based play, as you can see in the pictures at the bottom. It also includes augmented reality components where children can log on to a free app that you can download on an iPhone or a smartphone and play an additional level of games, including things like measuring the length of the park or a walkway, in the length of elephants, or finding multiple routes through a random walk system, as you see in the central picture. It's also a really exciting opportunity for us to integrate some of the other elements in the site. And we had an initial discussion with Derek Evans last night about maybe bringing in some of the history in the same component, where we can start to look at the historical locations of things and mark them out in AR or in on the site with additional information in AR. So that really starts to move the play from being just in that playground area and just on those equipment pieces and on the surface there. It starts to create, maybe 8 to 10 elements throughout the rest of the park where you can go on a hike or a walk with your children and do 2 or 3 of these events and have these different education walks.
One of the other things, Mike, just to jump in, sorry to interrupt. One of the other nice things is that Omo Moses that Mike was just talking about, in addition to the fact that this is something that he does and has installed in one of our Boston parks, but in a lot of the parks in surrounding neighborhoods, is that he's local to Malcolm X Park. And this is actually his neighborhood and his park, and where he comes and plays with his own children. So it's also really exciting to have somebody that that this is their specialty and that this is their home park. So I just wanted to throw that out there too.
Thanks, Laura. With that, we'll go to the next slide and we'll open it up for discussion again. Please let us know your thoughts on what we've shown, and we can go back to the play equipment slides or leave it here to discuss different components and elements of the site as it's designed.
Shade, you mentioned there would be more shade. Is there shade going to be in the park area?
Yep, we're working on developing both areas for shade structures and improving planting around it. You can see that we're incorporating some trees into the interior of the space. Of course, trees don't grow quickly. So what we're doing now is also working on adding as much shade shelters as we can with the amount of funding that we have. So at the top there in the center between the 2 existing boulder outcroppings or rock outcroppings, you can see we're starting to indicate an area for gathering space with shade shelters.
For the trees that are going to be installed in this area and throughout other areas of the park, is it an opportunity for them to be of a higher caliber of trees, similar to what was installed in Government Center compared to what is traditionally installed along sidewalks and area mediums throughout the city?
I haven't seen what was installed at Government Center. Typically I'm gonna go a little technical on it. The ones that are sidewalks and median trees are usually the lowest value trees that can go in, just because they're expected to have a short lifespan. So they're just trying to get them in there. I mean,
and I think because they also have so many that go in at one time, they're doing hundreds and hundreds at a time versus a smaller quantity here.
Right. Here, what we'll be doing is we'll be specifying 3 to 3.5 inch caliper trees in the current plans, as well as For the smaller flowering or ornamental trees, it'll be a smaller caliper, but we'll be going out and actually tagging these trees individually before they're brought to the site to make sure that they're of good enough quality, good quality to be put in. So yeah, we don't expect sticks and twigs. These will be nice trees when they're put in.
Yes, I have a question.
Go ahead.
I have a
Please.
question, please. I'm just concerned about them two huge rocks that's at the middle of the playground there right now. Are they gonna eliminate those?
No, right now we're leaving them. We're actually moving the play away from them a little further and keeping the play on the outside edge, minus the potential for a more naturalized play area, which we'll talk about in a little bit. And we're really trying to create a more of a gathering space around the rocks. There's always the potential for informal play on those stones, but by separating out the defined play spaces further from it, they're no longer as much of a attractive nuisance for kids. So basically, we're going to keep them because of the cost prohibitive nature of removing all of that, but we're going to keep the play away from it, of the kind of active play that would worry that kind of.
Yeah, because the kids do like my grandson.
Rock climbing.
He does like jumping on them. They're kind of.
They love rocks. Yeah.
Yeah, they could be kind of dangerous sometimes, most
Yeah.
of the time.
Okay.
For the kids.
Yeah, but they enjoyed it. Mhm.
All right, thank you.
Were they thinking about adding a rock climbing wall over there somewhere? Was that in the plan?
No rock climbing walls.
Oh, I was just throwing that out.
Hey, Mike, there's a question in the chat. Oh, sorry, there's a question in the chat, Mike, about the water feature at the park. So I don't know if we could maybe spend a couple more, if we could maybe describe that a little bit.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I completely glossed over that. To the top right of the slide there, you'll see the water splash pad on the park. So we're relocating it. We're not removing it. We're looking to improve the features, obviously, and I think we're holding around 9 separate features, including 2 boulders that will have a water spray coming out of them, a couple of water tunnels, which are ground-based jets that shoot out at an angle and create a tunnel of water, a couple of geysers, low flow, higher pressure, so kind of high spray, and then a couple of bubblers, so smaller spray. So we break it out into a higher activity area and a lower activity area. So more of a 2 to 5 play area to one side and more of a 5 to 12 and older children play area to the other side. So yes, we're going to have one. It's going to be of similar to slightly larger size than the current layout, but it'll have many more play elements in it and different water activities.
People are asking about water fountains too.
Yeah, yes, some type of water accessibility in these days, sure.
Yep.
So I just threw something in the chat real quick, but I'll in case people aren't looking at the chat, with drinking fountains, Boston Park standard is drinking fountains with the ADA drinking fountains, so they're accessible, with a bottle filling station is our new standard. And typically in larger parks like this that have a lot of different areas, we would typically put one near each of the main items in the park, so near the playground, near the courts, near the field. So we haven't necessarily decided exactly how many, but that's our standard for as we're moving forward in the design.
Question, going back to the last slide in terms of the playgrounds that were shown. There was a mention that one of them, something similar, is in Dudley or Nubian Square. Might you know where that would be?
I believe the project in Dudley Square is still in progress with OMO. I don't think it's been installed yet.
So which street or intersection would you know? Okay.
I don't know, but we can get you that information.
Okay, thanks.
I'd have to ask OMO. He wasn't able to make it today. He's traveling to Florida with the children to see his grandparents.
There's a question about the playground surfacing.
Oh, of course. And I think we'll probably have to make this the last question just because 5 minutes are up. The playground surfacing is all going to be poured in place unitary rubber safety surfacing. So this makes it 100% accessible and allows for the greatest amount of control for the safety protection and fall height. There's no plans to mix it as is currently out there between the poured in place surfacing and wood mulch. It'll be rubber from across the entire site for accessibility reasons.
Good.
Okay. I'd like to say a few things. My name is Dovie Abbey. We met before because I've been part of several meetings. And I live down the street from the park. It's literally half a block from me, as you all know. General comment about the project team. We made some progress since your early presentations. I've seen that you brought in a few consultants from the community, and which is it's the right step. It's a step in the right direction. Sorry to say it's not enough. We still have not seen at the major level consultants and other professionals from the community. That has to improve in this phase as well as the next phases of the project. Now, in terms of amenities, as you know, there are a lot of, there's a variety of options and ideas put forward by the community. To me, the most important thing is that you take them all into account, and it seems that this is what you're doing. So congratulations on that point. The one option that I haven't seen so far, maybe it's too early, is the baseball and soccer field. I don't know what the intention is about that.
Dovie, thank you. And we're going to cover a little more about the consultants near the end, especially with the construction phase part of the project. And then in the process of where things are currently, there's only so much we can do, but we're making sure we do as much as we can. In terms of the park area, we're definitely going to talk about the field in two sections. So first, we're going to talk about the passive area, and then we'll talk about the field area, and we'll get to that shortly. Elise, if you can go to the next slide. Oh, you're there. We're good. So in the passive area, we heard a lot, and the key thing we heard above everything else was keep the feeling of quiet and respite and nature and natural, but improve the safety and accessibility and comfort within the space. So, we heard about making it accommodate multi-generational use. We heard about adding more accessible routes through the park. And as you can see here, we did our best to find a way to create a interior route through the park that gets people through an accessible, through an accessible route to every major component of the park. The sheer steepness of the north-facing slope of the hill made it impossible for us to find a reasonable way to create a pathway up the hill that would be considered ADA accessible. So what we did was we made sure that we had an alternative route that was still enjoyable through the space. We also wanted to make sure we added seating and game tables along Dale Street and some more community level assets, as you can see near the entry. And we wanted to make sure that we were doing what we could to really keep that feeling of natural enjoyment through the space. So we go to the next slide, please. We've added things like the game tables near the edge and open plaza spaces at the transition to street edges and into the more heavily used spaces within the park. So development happens near the edges, but not near the center. We're also looking at the potential for an outdoor classroom / amphitheater space in the area directly outside of the Higginson Lewis School. That space could be a great location where we use the natural topography and add a very minimal touch of infrastructure, a few seat walls, and a little bit of plaza space. So children could go out and have outdoor classes in good weather, and small and medium community groups could get together and have events using the hillside as a natural amphitheater. Next slide, please. We're gonna open it up again for 5 minutes of discussion. I think really the major changes we're making here is really an accessible route. And the one thing I didn't talk about, again, was lighting. Every ADA route here has lighting at roughly 85 to 100 foot spacing in the current plans. The existing park, I don't remember the exact number of fixtures that are out there for pedestrian lighting on the existing park, but we're more than doubling it in the current plans. So we're looking to really improve the quality and quantity of light for safety at night, as well as improving the sight lines by doing selective pruning of many of these trees, making sure we keep as many as we possibly can throughout the construction process.
Mike, as we're
Emergency call boxes.
We're keeping the emergency call boxes. We'll be moving them slightly just to realign them with the new locations of things like the central seating area, but we're not removing any of them.
And one of the other things that makes me think about is one of the other coordinations within city departments that we've been working with is the police department, because people asked at the earlier community meetings about security cameras. So we have been working with BPD to look at locations that would work for them in terms of where they feel like, especially with the topography and the known activities that they have in the park, and we're working with them on locations for cameras as well. The other thing, Mike, there was a question and there was an image on the last slide about chess tables, and someone was asking earlier where chess tables were. So I was wondering if you could specifically talk about the thought about chess tables to answer that question.
Absolutely. I believe we're showing them in a couple of spaces. Our major space would be the Gathering Grove, where Elise is pointing at the edge of Dale there between the field space and the natural space. There's also the opportunity to include them in the barbecue plaza as one of the tables that could be dual use. These are permanent chess tables, so it's not something that would be affected by use in the barbecue space. We could also include them up and around the play area or in the central seating area, though we wanted to keep most of the gathering and the larger gathering activities happening towards the edges of the park to keep the more quiet and serene feeling of the interior.
Can I ask a question?
Of course.
Hi, it's Leah Christie. Now, where you have the Gathering Grove with the tables, the game tables. Now, is that the area where the seniors will have an area to sit down and use that area for games or whatever? What is this? These game tables for? Are they for the seniors?
Yes, in short, yes. I think that the idea is that, it's for anyone in the park, but knowing the active senior community, especially along Dale Street in that area,
right?
There's going to be two accessible entrances, one here at the corner of Dale, and there'll be an accessible route near the parking lot along the fields, which we'll get to shortly. So these will be, basically a nearby area that will have plenty of shade, seating, and an accessible route to these cafe tables and seats.
Okay.
It'll also be right next to the walking loop. So we'll get to that in the next section.
Right near the parking lot for Shelburne?
Yes.
Right. Yep. Yes. Okay. And then that would be one place where security cameras would be good in that area right there for security cameras. And another thing we had talked about at a few of the meetings were like equipment that the seniors could use. We had talked about exercise equipment.
Yep. And we do have those. We'll get to that into the next section.
Oh, okay. All right.
So I just wanted to ask about the amphitheater area. And I know it looks like there's going to be maybe circling benches or whatever. Hopefully they're not that hard concrete that we were talking about in the benches with the courts. But I'm just wondering if there's any thoughts of like incorporating any type of art. And I know you all were saying that there's going to be some type of AI where, folks can go around with their phones and it'll prompt them to do different activities and so forth. And so is any of that thought to be incorporated within that amphitheater area for the schools to use for classrooms as well as potentially community events?
So the short answer is we haven't picked the locations for the kind of interactive AI component yet. We haven't gotten that far in the development process, but it's a great location for it. I think that one of the things that we are still working out is how much community interest is there in this classroom amphitheater space. We're trying to juggle a very ambitious plan with the budget still. We expanded the budget, but we also expanded the scope, and we want to hear from you how important you think this amphitheater is, because it's one of those elements that's wasn't in the core design plan, but is something that we're thinking makes sense there, and we're hearing from people somewhat that it would be nice. So I think that art would be easy to incorporate in that space. I think the AI would be easy to incorporate in that space. The question that we don't know yet is whether or not that space is something that the community really wants to see. And we have a whole section in this that we'll discuss it further, but it sounds like you like it as a location and as something to include.
I also like it if it could be at least a 3-season space, which means there may need to be a cover of some sort to be able to accommodate that.
Thank you.
I have a question. As far as the walking paths, will they only be concrete as well, or will it be something that's a little bit more easy on our joints?
Actually, the paths will be asphalt, which should be a little easier on joints. The plan is to remove a lot of the really heavy concrete components of the existing pathways, and then do a smaller, an actual narrower path. So most of the paths will be 8 feet, and the core of the paths out there now are 8 to 10 feet, but they also have the 2-foot gutters and all of that on the side, so they become really wide and heavy. But we'll have some 8-foot paths and some 10-foot paths through the space, but they'll all be asphalt.
Okay.
Does anyone else have any comments on the passive area? All right, if not, we're going to move on to design area 4, the field, the new space. The field here, obviously this is late in breaking, so we really need to get some feedback from everybody. We heard some initial comments, unsolicited about things that need to happen there. We heard we need to see soccer striping of various sizes. We need to see accessible walking track that wasn't right next to the courts. So we've actually moved it to this space with a buffer off of the field itself. People wanted to see improvements to the field quality, and they wanted to see fitness nodes along the walking path. So what we've done here is we've created a space for a synthetic multi-use field. Right now we're showing a full-size high school soccer, U12 youth soccer, ultimate frisbee, and kickball, which is what is most often scheduled on the site through the permitting process. We also have an accessible entry from Washington Street, which is currently the inaccessible stairwell between the Shelburne and the DCR property. Beyond that, we're also adding a sidewalk connection to Dale Street, new tree planting, terrace seating along the hillside where people are currently sitting to watch games as well, making that more formalized, and improving the LED sports lighting. We're adding, as I mentioned, the adult fitness nodes around the walking trail, as well as benches spaced at intervals to allow anyone to take a rest, take a break, and enjoy the space as well. So this becomes a more multi-generational active use space. And we're hoping that with the buffer that we've been able to leave between the core play area of the synthetic turf field and the walking path, that allows the spectators to the games to have space inside the walking path and not interrupt casual users of that space. We're greatly improving the tree planting around the space, working to add more natural shade to the edges. And we're improving some of the fencing and fence quality around the fields. One of the major issues with the field quality now is motorized bicycles and ATVs getting on there and ripping up components of it. So with the synthetic turf field, there'll be a low fence. Current plans do not call out any permanent gates in any way, so it'll still be open to the public. It's just we got a fence to stop motorized vehicles to get into it. I'm covering most everything there. Now, since this is new, Lauren, am I missing any major components to this area?
I will be honest, I was replying to some comments that people had sent me and asked questions. So I wasn't fully listening to absolutely everything you said, but I didn't notice anything being missing.
Okay, well, let's open it up to a little bit of discussion. We have a couple of images of, I'm sorry, we have one more slide before that, Elise, and it just shows a couple of images of multi-generational use of outdoor athletic equipment, some of the improvements we can make to both seating and the quality of turf through synthetic turf. So does anyone have thoughts on this space? I know this is really the first time we've brought a major design plan to the public, and we really want to get community input on this.
Parking lot, is that still going to be there?
Yes, the parking lot is still
security
there.
for it, sorry, insecurity stuff.
I believe we're going to be covering some security cameras through the parking lot as part of this design, but we're still working that out with BPG.
What is the surface of the walking, the fitness loop?
The fitness loop right now is still asphalt.
Okay.
It's just marked, and so there'll be lane marks, and then there'll be potential distance marks as well. The loop itself is actually a quarter mile.
That's good, because definitely much better usage. I know, like in Marcelo, when I used to have a walking program there a long time ago, we used to always walk. I'm glad to see they finally putting in more of the fitness loops and the walking paths around.
I hope that, you know, the majority of the usage would be for the young folks, because unfortunately in the past, they have not been able to really utilize this field. And, you know, I would really love it to be really, you know, focused on the young folks utilizing this more.
Lauren, has there been any mention of the improvement to the parking lot by the field?
We have talked about it. It's not necessarily part of our scope, but we have been talking about it and trying to see internally, city department to city department, potentially how we can make some improvements there. And I think we can kind of stretch some of our scope a little bit to try to do a few things here and there, but it may need to be a departmental coordination.
Okay.
Definitely still
Because
on our
I mean, if people are going to be, even the youth, if they're going to be using the field, then they need to be able to park, but they need to be able to park safely with lighting.
Yeah, I think also to the question just a few moments ago, it's, you know, with the synthetic turf field surface, it really is attractive in the sense that it's able to accommodate all different age groups, all different user groups and stakeholder groups. So the representative also had her hand raised. If she'd like to chime in now, please.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you to everyone for joining on the call. Seems like you guys are getting pretty close to where we want to be, so I appreciate the hard work that's gone into this so far. So my question is around parking. So I understand that there has been an increase in allocation of funds to be able to go into revamping the park, which I appreciate. But my question is around parking, and parking particularly on the boulevard. Where I know that, you know, there's been a big issue with the Boston Police Department ticketing a lot of folks when they double park. And if you're increasing the capacity at the basketball courts in particular and throughout the park, I think that it makes sense to be able to increase the capacity when it comes to parking. So I wanted to hear what your thoughts are when it comes to the design team around creating curb cuts and creating not parallel parking, but kind of like kind of side to side stack parking rather than kind of just like regular parallel park.
Talking about diagonal parking.
So I can try to answer part of that. It's not been something that we've looked at, mainly because in terms of regulations with parkland, we actually are not allowed to give parkland over to parking. So anything that was not already parking to begin with, we actually regulation-wise are not allowed to do that. And not meaning Boston Parks regulation, but it's federal parkland, I believe. So there are regulations about that. But we had not looked at that. I know that we have been talking a lot with the police, and I know that they're aware that there are concerns in parking along that issue. We can also try to have conversations with BTD and see if there's any way that in any of their future plans, they can look at increasing parking along the street to see if that might be able to help. But I don't think as part of our project that we're going to be able to increase that at all.
Okay, thank you for that. And I definitely strongly recommend that.
It's a good suggestion. Thank you.
Yeah, I definitely strongly recommend that and think that the project will be incomplete without increasing the capacity when it comes to parking.
I agree 100%. They always do these developmental things and make it so that we can all attend, but they don't accommodate for space for people to park and such. And I know we all want people to use public transportation, but and realistically, when you're playing basketball and you have teams, it's mostly vehicles.
If I can chime in just on behalf of Roxbury Youth Soccer League, I just would like to say we really appreciate Design Area 4, the fields being included in this improvement. This is what we were hoping for, so I just wanted to say thank you for adding this and echo the thought of having more lighting in the parking lot on the Shelburne side.
Good. Thank you for that.
Hello, can I chime in?
Yes, please.
Yes, hi. This is Donald Brown chiming in. I had a couple of questions. I just wanted to get an update on. I'm coming into the Zoom meeting kind of late right now. But anyways, I just wanted to know when is actually what a date of when we actually going to start the construction. And
players that have stepped up big.
I asked if we could get people who live in the neighborhood, the minorities, to get on the job to help do the job of the park. Was that implemented into the contract of the construction company that's going to be doing the job?
They're great questions. There are a lot of people
Somebody
who
needs to turn their TV down.
If people aren't speaking, if they could mute, it's a little hard to hear. That would be great.
That would be really good.
So just to try to answer those questions, because they're very good ones. And I know we actually had a lot of people join after the meeting started. So just to reiterate the timeline, after this meeting, we're going to go back and make any changes that we need to based on comments and work on putting together construction drawings to bid out. We're looking to bid the project out in spring in this spring. And then start construction in the summer is our plan. We don't have an official start date yet because there's still work to be done before we bid the project out.
Okay.
And in terms of the question about contractors, so there is not a contractor on board yet. We will go through state procurement laws and state procurement because that's what we have to do legally. So we will be bidding the project out, and per bid laws, we have to award the project to the lowest responsible and responsive bidder. That being said, in general, Parks doesn't have a lot of minority contractors that bid on projects. And we know that, and it's something that we want to change. It's not something that we see, right? We can't bid a project to someone who doesn't, we can award a project to somebody who doesn't bid it, right? Who doesn't go after it. So part of what we've been doing, and there's a slide a little later to talk more about it, but I do want to just address it when it was brought up. We've been working with Joshua McFadden in the Mayor's Office of Economic Development, and one of his main goals and his job is to try to help increase minority and small businesses, especially contractors. He does, I think it's every month, he does meetings to teach people how to go after projects in the city. So not just specific projects, but how do you bid them? Where do you look to find out what's available? And so he does those. And then he also does information sessions that are specific to each project. So that way we can tell people, this is how you bid it. This is what trades are going to be needed. This is how you go about trying to be a part of this project so that we start to get more contractors bidding than we do have. Because since we have to follow that law, what we're trying to do is get more people to understand how to go about it, right? And we do already have that information session for Malcolm X Park planned, and that's going to be April 8th, and we're going to get to that at a slide down the road. So even though I can't personally make changes, we're trying to find ways to attract those small and minority contractors to go after these projects so that we then can award projects to them.
Okay.
I hope that helps a little bit.
Okay,
Can I
well, I'm
just
just
ask,
trying to, I
Isn't
just feel
Joshua,
like,
isn't Joshua McFadden with the city?
He
level?
is. He's with the city's Office of Economic Development. Exactly.
So do you have to be a state, because they're not, you don't automatically become one and the other, right? There's a
No, yeah,
second
we don't have to get people off of the state procurement list. That doesn't have anything to do with us.
Oh, I thought you had said state vendors, so they can be a city of Boston vendor.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. And so one of the things when we talk about the meeting for the economic development meeting, the information session for this park, one of the things that I was planning on doing as well is to send out a reminder to everybody on my list, right, that this meeting is happening. So if you know friends, neighbors, family that are small, independent, minority contractors, please, send them our way. And then also when we do bid when we bid the project as well, I'm going to also send out the information to all of you guys as well, because if you guys know people, that's how we're going to build up our contractor base, is by getting that information out there. So that's my plan as well, to make sure everybody knows.
I got that. I understand what you're saying. I'm not talking really about that. I just meant straight out laborers. They really don't have that much skill. These are people in the neighborhood that's unemployed. Right. And I'm just trying to see if they can get on the job of the people who do get the contract.
Okay. Oh, that's a great question too. So absolutely. So once there is a contractor, once we bid the project and there is a contractor on board, they absolutely, there is a sign that goes up on the park that has their name and phone number and how to apply for jobs. So that actually will be posted at the construction site when they start.
Well, they do that at all construction jobs. I don't mean like that. I just mean that they are going to say, we have in the contract, it's already put in there, that you have to put on X amount of people who live in the community, because we live there. And these are the people who I see now who's unemployed that can use a job. And I think they should be able to come on that job.
And I understand that. And again, my hands are tied with what I'm allowed to do. And in our bids, we have in there the Boston job resident policy, which has the percentage of Boston residents, minority, and women that are required to be on a job site. And that is city policy, and that is always in our bids. And our contractors are required to meet that. And they actually have to turn in payroll and documentation to the Boston job resident policy in the city of Boston every week. And every time I get an invoice from a contractor, I send it to Boston job resident policy and say, did they meet this? Can I pay it? And they tell me whether I can or not. So there are, it doesn't necessarily say from Roxbury, right? But it does say city of Boston. So and I know it's not perfect.
It's not, but I thought we could go as far as whatever contractor is going to take the bid is already set on the paper saying, well, if you're going to do the contract, this is what you got to do, is take on this many minorities as well.
That is what they're required to do. Yes, but it doesn't say from Roxbury, right? They have a percentage of Boston residents, minority, and women.
Okay, got you.
It just isn't neighborhood specific, it's city specific.
Right. One last question, and that'll be it for me. I just wanted an update about the dog park. Is it a final decision of a yes or a no?
We're not proposing a dog park in the project.
Okay, great. Now that area, with the dog, okay, one more question. Where the dog park was going to be, since it's not going to be one, could we put the outdoor work, fitness stuff, equipment in that area?
So we didn't have a designated space. We had talked about a couple of different options. So I'm not sure which space you're referring to exactly. I'm sorry.
Oh, I didn't know this. I thought you had a specific space where the dog park was going.
We had a couple of options.
They already have a space for the fitness already. They showed it.
I missed it. I'm sorry, everybody. I'm sorry. I did miss all that. Because I did take a tour that no one knew about with a couple of the people in the community yesterday. And we was kind of figuring out there was a design where they was going to have the workout equipment next to the tennis court. But since we was putting the bleachers there, that, you know, that took out the fitness area. So I was just wondering where they was going to put the fitness area at. That's all.
Go ahead, Rudy.
Okay,
Can
good.
I say something about hiring people in the neighborhood and minorities? I'm a retired construction worker. You also got to have a skill to come on the job. You just can't come right off the street and say I want a job. You know, you got to have a skill. That's all I have to say.
Okay, thank you for that.
So can I ask one last thing? I'm sorry, just around reassessing how funds are going to be allocated. Like you all can tell that this is a passionate conversation. Black people need to get paid and make money off of this project.
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
So, you know, we know you need to be a preferred vendor, and we know that during the pandemic, there's been an effort of pulling in more vendors of color to make sure we can bid on these, but then we know projects can be too big, and then that locks us out, you know, so then there's the smaller contractors that can't bid. There needs to be a very deliberate way of making sure Black people are getting paid off of this $7.7 million.
I completely agree and hear what you're saying. And I think that's what Joshua McFadden is planning to help with and try to help us in that. And I wish he were able to join us tonight. Unfortunately, he had another meeting tonight as well. It's busy. I think everyone's meetinged out. But I think that hopefully when we are able to do the information session on this, he's going to be able to tell us ways that we can accomplish that. And then someone did put a comment in asking about why no dog park, and what we have to have in order to put a dog park in is that we have to, we can't move forward with adding in a new dog park without emphatic community support, including a dedicated friends group that's willing to take on the maintenance of the dog park. And we did have several community members who were emphatically excited about a dog park, but we had equally as many, if not more, who were very concerned about it. And so that was why the decision was made, was because we didn't meet the threshold of having an emphatic community group that was willing to take on the maintenance of the dog park.
Good.
There was no request for that.
But you know, can I say, this is Leah Christie again. And I had thought about something, you know, because when you did that survey regarding the dog park, and you said there were a lot of people from the Garrison Trotter area that were very interested in this dog park. And my thought was, they have that Monroe Park, which is much closer to the Garrison Trotter area, where they could put, I mean, and that park is not used as much as Malcolm X Park. So that would be a perfect place for them to put a dog park, since the majority of the people lived in that area that wanted the dog park. That was just my way of looking at things.
Thank you.
Rather than Malcolm X Park.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I think this has been a good conversation. I know that we still have a little bit more left to go. I'm going to go ahead and re-mute everybody in order to jump on to the next topic. But again, we will be opening things back up for more discussion towards the end.
Thanks, Lauren. And I'm going to be pretty quick and concise here because I know everyone has more things to do tonight. We have an ambitious project scope here. We're really trying to do a lot to space. And as we develop the designs further, we're going to get a better and better understanding of the details of how much things are going to cost. And we want to get an understanding of the elements that we may be able to add in if we find that we have enough money to include them. You know, there are the core elements that we know we're doing, and then there are elements that are kind of on the edge, things that you know, I think everyone would like to see, but we may not have the funds to include all of them. So we wanted to get some input from the community tonight on what's the most important and obviously, if everything goes swimmingly well and we can get all of them in, we will. But the three major areas that are really kind of icing on the design or extra that we haven't had a lot of direct input into, but we want to get that feeling from include the natural playground area. And this would be the area highlighted in that key plan, basically at the top of the hill between the 2 to 5 and 5 to 12 play. This would be a more exploratory area. There wouldn't be a lot of moving pieces or extremely active rotation kind of play. It wouldn't be swings. And because of the maintenance concerns with natural wood fiber, this would also be rubber play surfacing, but it would have a more natural feel. So we'd be including something like a log play structure, a toddler playhouse, log stilts, and other more natural elements as kind of a transition between the two play spaces. Next slide, please. The other area that we're looking at is, as I mentioned before, the amphitheater and outdoor classroom. This is another space that adds a component and activates an edge between the Higginson Lewis School and the rest of the park. Could create a classroom space, could create a bit of an event space, and really may create an additional focal point that doesn't exist in the park space currently. But it does come with additional costs that we want to make sure that we understand the value versus the cost for it from you. And finally, just the number and amount of shade shelters. We've heard that shade is extremely important. We're not ignoring that, but the cost of shade shelters as a physical structure are extremely expensive. So do we focus on the natural playground area? Do we focus on the classroom area? Or do we really focus on distributing as much shade as possible throughout the site instead of at a few core key places? I'll open it back up to discussion here. That's really what we want to hear. Anybody? Any thoughts?
I think you want to include shade where there's going to be people foremost, right? So if that means the playground, the basketball field, the basketball court, the playground, like absolutely with those spaces where we know are already heavily used and gonna continue to increase use. I think that should be a priority first, and then figuring out additional spaces to create shade. I mean, I like these shade covers. So thinking about along, where those would be along the walking paths or whatever spaces, but the priority should be where there's going to be people.
Has the local school showed interest in having the amphitheater?
Yeah, we've heard some interest from both teachers and children in that space, but it hasn't been more as a classroom than as an amphitheater.
Because that would be the most, like, I just think they would use it the most. If that would be something that you did do, the school would probably benefit the most from that. And maybe the Shelburne too, having that community center right there, they may want to utilize it too. But the shade, I agree. That's going to be the number one thing, especially since you guys keep saying that's the thing that most people are requesting. So like shade along the walk areas, like you showing in that middle picture, and then shading for the bleachers, like you're showing in the picture on the right. I think those are what people are looking for.
Right now, I think we can prioritize those spots that really would benefit from having some shade. And they tend to be those areas where lots of people would gather and where there's not a lot of shade at the moment. So, introducing some new shade in some of these seating areas and adjacent to the court complex, for instance, would be important, and up at the children's playground area. I think there's a couple of hands that are raised too. So I'd invite folks to go ahead and ask your question if your hand is raised.
Hi, my name is Tony Roach. I teach at the Higginson Lewis and phys ed and health teacher there. We have been starting to use our outdoor classroom more and more in the last couple of years. And obviously with pandemic, even though when things clear up, you're still going to use more of the outdoor space. That space you're talking about now, we've been using it for recess and having our 7th and 8th graders use that space. So looking to have a more formalized space for different programs will definitely be helpful. But I don't want to see the same thing that happens in the park near my house, Jeep Jones Park, where the amphitheater down below doesn't really get used that often. So you want to make sure that it's usable space for other programs, not just for the school, but for the community as well. But definitely much better improvement overall. Our main concern for the school, where a lot of our parents don't want the kids in the park because of the safety. So that's one thing we look into hopefully improve so we can utilize the park more than we do now.
Okay, good points. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Tony. That's great. And just in case you aren't aware, we are also renovating Jeep Jones Park, especially the lower terrace, and looking at the amphitheater in particular. So I'll make sure I email you the information on that so we can get you in the loop on that too.
Yeah, because I live right around the corner.
And following up on that question, I agree with shaded space for where there are the majority of people. On the topic of the amphitheater, I guess I wonder if there would be any limitations or criteria for community members who are not educators to be able to use that space. What would be the frameworks for people outside of education to be able to use that space for other purposes, if any at all?
Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that this would be an unscheduled space as part of the park and as an informal space. I think it wouldn't be something that would be often scheduled out for uses. It'd be very much an informal space for anyone to use.
That would be my guess, and I could talk to our permitting department to see if they typically would do permits for things, so that if someone wanted to be able to reserve it, whether that would be possible, I could ask that question. But that's the type of space that we could see, like someone said earlier, the school using, the community center using. It could be a space that was created that maybe the Parks Department could do some of the events that they have in terms of an outdoor movie night, or something like that could also happen there.
Hi, good evening. My name is Ellis, and I'm a resident, and I live like right around the corner from the park. And I believe that having the amphitheater to also do like a lot of different cultural events, rallies and things like that, I think having that space there and having it available to the community would be very beneficial to a lot of people as well. So I think, yes, maybe doing reservations or a calendar or a schedule that may help alleviate it in some ways, possibly. Thank you.
Thanks, Alice.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. How do you guys reach out to like sports teams to let them know that the field is available, and basketball teams to let them know that the basketball court is available? Like, how do people know that they can utilize these spaces? And then my second question is, I know that you had mentioned that Parks and Recreation is going to maintain the space still. They don't maintain it very well now. So how can we get more maintenance for it? And what's the talk about that, and how to keep the space nice after all of this construction is done?
Sorry, I realized I was still muted. So yeah, it's a great question, and it's a challenge that we have. Unfortunately, we don't have enough maintenance staff in the Parks Department, and our guys do absolutely everything they can. And I know that part of why we do the projects that we do, in addition to bringing things up to ADA standards, making things have more play value, and also just making things more state of the art. When we do that, when we make these changes, it makes it actually easier for our guys to maintain it as well. And not guys and gals, to maintain it as well. And so that right now is part of how we can help. And I know that we're going through transitions. There'll be transitions with the mayoral change. And with that always comes opportunities to look at how resources are allocated. And I definitely will be letting our maintenance department know that this has come up multiple times, and that there's concern about how it's being maintained now and also how it's being maintained in the future.
Lauren, I know that, because of this COVID-19, a lot of departments, staff have been affected by it,
Yeah.
So hopefully once we get through all this, that staff can be reinforced, where the maintenance staff has enough staff to upkeep the parks. Yeah, they need to upkeep the parks, but we also need to hold the folks that are gonna be utilizing these parks, the organizations that are gonna hold these tournaments, these leagues, you know, they need to be accountable too for upkeeping these parks as well, because not only are they gonna be using them, you know, we got the community, the families that wanna use them too. And it's only fair for them to be able to utilize these parks in good, fair condition. So we gotta hold everyone, all of us have in this community have to be accountable for the upkeep of that park. That's our park. And we have to take it back and take care of it. All of us, the maintenance staff from Parks and Rec, but the community as a whole also.
I agree. Thank you for that. And
I have something to say. Back in the days, they had groups of community people that would take care of things like that. You can't, the Parks and Recreation can't do everything.
There you go.
If we want it, that means we as a group, we need to get groups together that'll take care of it also.
That's right.
And that's something that we have to work on in the community.
Ownership.
Yes.
We talked a little earlier about taking our pop back, so to speak. And I think there needs to be folk in the community who are really interested at some point in time, once the park is renovated, that we as a community need to be able to educate people about what needs to happen in order for that park to stay in the best condition possible. And that is the vendors who sit out there and make money selling their goods, they need to be responsible for the papers, the trash that they sell to people, that they need to be able to contribute in cleaning that park.
Absolutely. So I'm going to, with that, I think that's a really important comment, and I'm going to jump back into the presentation really quickly and just want to say there was a comment about creating a Friends of Malcolm X Park. We're always happy to do that, and we actually have someone, her name is Christine Brandeo. She used to be over at Office of Neighborhood Services, but now she's our community outreach coordinator and the person who coordinates friends groups. So if anyone is interested in that, please feel free to email me because we can absolutely get that set up. And I apologize for running over tonight, but like we said earlier, there's a ton of information and a ton of input that we need from you guys. So I'm gonna hand it back over to Mike real quick because we wanna make sure that we can talk through the histories, which I know people have brought up in terms of making sure that we're acknowledging Malcolm X and the history. Thank you, there we go, in the park and the neighborhood. We also want to talk about art, which also has been brought up quite a bit as well. So I'm going to pass it back over to Mike real quick.
Thanks, Laura. And again, I talked before about the members of kind of an informal committee that we're then going to turn into a consultant position. And I know it's not the level that we've discussed prior, but as a paid consultant position to develop the history panels as a direct input to the project. What we need right now is a little more input on what kind of histories we want to talk about. So we've talked with Derek Evans, Rodnell Collins, and many others, and we'll continue to talk with them over the next 2 months. And some of the major themes that have come out include the list that you see here. Includes the history of Malcolm X. It includes the history of the civil rights movement in Roxbury and around this park. Includes geologic history of the park and its surroundings, going way back, looking at, why is this such a rocky, amazing outcrop of stone in the middle of Boston? Why is it still here today when everything else is developed? There's also the multicultural history of the community surrounding the park over time, from the initial settlers and the pre-colonial Native Americans to the changes through the 17 and 1800s up until today. Another key component is these basketball courts and knowing the notable basketball figures who have had roots in Roxbury and played on these courts. There's also the history of the park design itself. How did it become a park specifically? And other thoughts that you guys might have. Our goal will be to have 4 or 5 historical elements in the site as a specific place to come and learn a little bit, have a a bit of a moment to learn a little more and think what else might have happened in this park. And the goal will be to get people even more interested in learning more than what we're putting in there. It's a teaser for the history, not getting the entire history of the park on boards in the park itself. So again, we're going to try to keep it brief, maybe 2 or 3 minutes of your thoughts on what you'd like to see. Also, writing it in the comment section might be a great way to do it, just to write down a list of which ones you like, other thoughts you have. And then we'll switch to the last major component we'll talk about, which will be the art component, with a brief rediscussion of the bidding process.
Well, one of the things that I like the community to recognize, and a lot of folk in the community don't realize this, but Lauren, if you look in the charters of the Parks Department, the actual name of the field is the Jackie Robinson. That's the actual name of the field itself. I think.
Thank you for bringing that up. We should make sure that we get a sign that that has that on it, so that everyone else knows that too, Miss Harris. Thank you.
And you know, as far as signage goes, that whole park in terms of Malcolm X, there needs to be signage in many other places besides where it's at right now.
I agree. And that's one thing that we didn't talk about that I'm just going to mention really quickly. Things like signage, rules signs, park name signs, that sort of thing. Those are all standard in our park designs, but it's not something we usually touch on in these meetings just because there's so many other things. Also things like trash cans, benches, all of those are things that will be part of this, but are into the more details, whereas we were just trying to look at some of the broader ideas right now.
I think that asking this question about history during a community meeting like this, and especially towards the end when we're already over time, is a haphazard way of gathering that information. There are a wealth of elders in this community that have knowledge of the history of the neighborhood, the history of the park. There are numbers of us who are historians ourselves, or scholars who have this information. And it seems like that should be a separate meeting if maintaining the history of the park is actually a priority. I can't imagine that in these comments that's gonna happen in any kind of notable or quality way.
Right.
I also would mention that in a number of neighborhoods across the country where gentrification is prevalent, as it is in Roxbury, numbers of places that were named after African-American figures, those areas are being changed, which leads me even more to say that this is a bigger conversation, because however we're documenting the history of the park needs to be done in such a way that changing the name of the neighborhood or the park is very difficult to do once the history of that area is documented.
Can I just say something, Lauren? And she has a good point. And I think that, just a suggestion that, one of the folks that are on this Zoom meeting right here, Mrs. Harris, who has more knowledge of the history of Roxbury than any of us. And I think that that's a person that you should start with, that has other people that she can pull in that know the history of Roxbury, to get the representation that you're looking for.
I think that would be the job of the person you hire as a consultant. You're talking about paying somebody as a consultant. I think that should be that person's job.
I'm doing my consultant.
So Mike, so that's what we are trying to do. And we have been talking with several people in the community about history, and we're not by any means trying to write this history ourselves. Or document this history ourselves. And if there are people, in addition to the neighborhood folks that we have already been talking with, like Rodnell Collins and Derek, I'm sorry, I cannot remember Derek's last name right now. Mike, can you? Mike, yes, thank you, Derek Evans. We would be more than happy to add to that list because we want to make sure this is right. And by no means was this supposed to be left towards the end in terms of running late. Like we said, there are so many things to talk about here, and we wanted to give people opportunities to comment earlier in the presentation as well. And this is not meant to be pushed towards the end. So I would love to have, if anyone wants to be a part of that, I would love for you guys to let us know, and we would be more than happy to have more people involved in those conversations and have separate history conversations for this. And also to say, there is no part of this project that has ever thought about or is planning on or even remotely thinking about renaming the park or any of these internal elements. I just want to make that very, very clear.
We can understand that. That would be understood to begin with. And along those lines, when should we expect the next meeting or meetings that we could pick up possibly where we're leaving off from now, going along to other things that we discussed tonight?
Yeah, so that's a great question too. So in terms of our community outreach process, we do a 3-meeting process, and this is our 3rd meeting. So what we do from here is we go back, we look at the design, we make any changes that need to be made based on what we've talked about. And then what we do from there is we typically reach out via email, send updated plans, send updated information when we're planning on going out to bid, any changes that we've made. We send that out to everyone who's been involved, who's come to meetings. We also post it on the project website. And then for this project, we will have an additional meeting in April, on April 8th, which is going to be the information session for bidding, which will be talking about the project, where it is and how it's moving forward from there.
I think good progress has been made. Obviously, there's some things folks will be still looking for, which is to be expected. And along those lines, yeah, that would be good for sure.
Okay, wonderful. And I also want to make sure that we do have a chance to talk about art as well, because I know that that's something else that ties a lot in with the history conversation as well. So I do want to make sure that we get a chance to chat about this too. Mike, do you want to jump in on this?
Absolutely. So, we're looking to create spaces to include public art on the site. And we've been in discussion with the Boston Arts Commission and Sarah Rodrigo, who is the public art project manager. And I'm going to turn it over to her. But briefly, we're again looking for more input as we're developing core areas that we see some public art potentially happening, especially around the fields and along Dale Street. One of them is, are there certain artists you would like to see represented here? And then should the request go out across the city for artists in the city, or should it be kept focused on Roxbury artists? And then are there any art advisors in the community that should be included in the process for selecting the artists? So these aren't the artists themselves, but advisors to the process in selecting the artists.
Mark, were you talking?
Yeah, I just want to ask a question. So you said that the next meeting is going to be on the 1st, right?
No, there's a meeting on April 8th.
Oh, the 8th. Excuse me.
Yes. No, I just want to make sure everybody got the right date in there.
I'm sorry about that. My concern more than anything is that the meetings that we have are just informal. Like, we give our opinion, whoever's in the meeting, and then, we're not really in on the decision. We just give our opinion. And so whatever we don't bring up in this meeting today won't be discussed between now and April. You know what I mean? And so if we have any more concerns or things like that, they're like individual things of the community that, you know what I mean? Like, I'll have to reach out to you, or, Ms. Harris, or whoever it is has to reach out individually. And so as a community, we kind of lose track of, what things have been said and what things haven't been said. And so I'm just wondering if there's no, you know what I mean? Like you said, the next meeting, I guess, is just to inform us of what decisions you've made, correct?
Correct, and that's how this process works. So we've had 3 meetings already, and the first meeting was to start to gather that input. The second meeting, we looked at a variety of different ideas and a variety of different concepts, and took that information in. And then this is the 3rd meeting where we're presenting the design. And so at this point in the project, if there are concerns or are things based on this design that people have concerns about or want to see differently, this is the time and this is the meeting to have that conversation. Right. Because from here is where we do go back and finalize.
So as she was talking about the history piece, right?
Right.
If there's no time to have that conversation, where does that fall in? How do you guys make a decision without having that conversation is what I'm trying to figure out.
So what we've been doing is we've been talking to specific people within the community that are working on the history part with us. And if others want to be involved with that, I think we can have separate history meetings, but it's not going to be another full community meeting to talk about basketball and fields and playgrounds and passive areas. We can definitely continue the conversation about history, but it won't be a full project meeting, if that makes sense.
Okay.
And if anyone would like to be a part of those meetings, please feel free to add your name or email address, even if it's a private chat to myself. That would be wonderful because we'd love to have as many people involved that would like to be involved in that.
Fair enough.
Yeah, we've already had 5 or 6 just informal conversation type meetings to get initial ideas. And as we move forward to design development and construction documents, the formalization of this, the entire process is not for us to decide what's going on in the panels, but for us to hire somebody as a consultant to tell us what's going to go on these panels. So just to clear that up, we're looking for some general feedback from the community tonight on the history and on the art. We're not making decisions on this. We're really looking to find those people in the community. And so far we've been talking to, again, we said
Michael.
Ronell, and have them as a consultant that helps make these decisions. And other people should be involved as well, as Simone said.
Hi, Michael.
Yes.
Hi, this is Aisha. How are you? Who's the consultant, or have you hired one yet, or you're?
We haven't yet. No, right now we're still getting through basically tonight's meeting where we have the big concept, and now as we take the comments that we get here and delve into the details, that's where we work to hire the consultant or consultants. It doesn't have to be a single person. And I spoke with Derek Evans at length actually last night about some ideas that he had. We've spoken to Rodnell and Jose Lopez in past meetings, as well as a few others, and I'm sorry I can't remember their names.
Do you mind if I send you a couple of names?
Absolutely, please do. Absolutely.
All right,
It's been an amazingly interesting series of meetings on the history and histories here.
I also want to point out that earlier in a chat, and I don't remember whether it was just to me or whether it was in the public chat, someone was saying that they were really excited to see that we were working and communicating with members of the community, and that the one thing that they had pointed out was that they were all male. And so I did want to acknowledge that, and to also let you know that when we just said, would anyone like to be involved with this history section, I had multiple females reach out and say that they would like to be involved. So I'm trying to remember who it was that had said that earlier. So I just wanted to acknowledge that because it's a very valid comment, and appreciate that we now have some females that we can add into that group as well.
So Lauren, this is Leah Christie again.
Yes.
So what has been presented tonight is what is going to be, these are the final plans. Is this what I'm understanding?
Concept. Yes,
right.
This is the final concept. So now sorry, go ahead.
And this is what is going to be going out after the meeting of April 8th, that you're going to be sending it out to the bidders? This is the final concept. Whatever you've presented tonight is the final concept.
Correct. And then what we do from here is we take this and we do all of the detailed drawings to show how to build it and what each of the little details are. So we're not showing in these drawings, exactly every single little thing in the playground, every bench and every little spot that things go. So all of those things get added in as we move through the designs. But this is the concept, other than like we talked about with the amphitheater, the nature play, and the shade. Those are things that we're currently looking at getting input from all of you guys. And we'll be looking at that within our greater overall budget. Because like Mike said, there's a lot going in here, and 7.7 million is a lot of money. But when it comes to built items, it doesn't go as far as everyone thinks it goes. And so we're getting a lot in here for that price, but we can't get absolutely everything. So those are the three things that are potentials to be in, but could also not be, depending on as we go through those drawings and get a little bit more detailed. But that's when we can email out, we can let people know, these are the things that we know we can get in, this is what we're going to be bidding out. We can talk about, this history group has met, and these are the things that we talked about. Here are some of the final things that we're putting into these interpretive sign areas.
Okay. All right.
I do want to also make sure that, Mike, we didn't get Sarah on here yet, did we?
Sorry, I was muted, sorry. We haven't actually pulled Sarah on yet to speak if she wanted to.
I do want to get Sarah involved, because one of the things in terms of the art, and it's something that when Bernard and I have talked about art offline quite a bit, about some of the interesting things that could happen in the park. We talked about, just so that everybody understands, when we talk about art in the park and murals, it's something that, because it is, Sarah can probably explain this better, but because it is art, it goes through the Arts Commission, and it's actually something that they help us run that process to select artists. And so I know that we really want to have local artists in the to be able to work on this project. So I think she's going to talk a little bit about that process, so that everybody understands when we get there. And I think part of what we want to hear tonight is, are there local artists that we already know about? I know that Bernard's been really helpful talking with me, and I don't know if it's something that, Bernard, you'd be interested in having conversations with the Arts Commission to sort of try to help us figure some of that out and be able to move forward with it. I don't know, Sarah, are you still on?
Yeah.
Do you mind jumping in?
I am. Oh, sorry. Please go ahead.
No, all I was going to say is, I just want to say, like, I'm not necessarily like the artist, you know what I mean? I just happen to know a lot of artists in the community, different muralists, you know what I mean? Just like a lot of other people, I'm sure, who are on the call. And so it's just one of those things where I do a lot of things in the community as far as art goes. And I feel like a lot of times, like kind of just what you were speaking to, people, the process, you know what I mean? There's people from the community who want to be a part of it, and then there's the actual process, and sometimes the two just don't mesh well together. And so I just wanted to, before the process even got started, say, hey, I know some people who have done a lot of things in the community. They've already done these murals, people know them, and so on and so forth, and being able to volunteer their names and kind of make that happen. So that was all I really wanted to do.
Thanks. It's nice to meet you, and thank you everyone for your incredible generosity of time being here so late. They saved the best for last, right? We could talk about art really quick. So I'm Sarah Rodrigo. I work in the Mayor's Office of Arts and Culture, and I staff the Boston Art Commission as well. I'm the city's public art project manager, which means I run all of the commissioning projects. So when the city commissions an artwork for any city property, I project manage that process, from putting out a call to artists to finally accepting the work into the collection. So I'm mostly here to listen tonight, and then to put my email in the chat so that we can have further conversations, because I think that at this point, artwork in the park probably deserves its own meeting, or possibly one in conjunction in some ways with history, because I'm also sensing there are themes that we may want to consider for works in this park. Obviously, Malcolm X being a very kind of low-hanging fruit theme, but there are other interests in the community in terms of what the artworks might look like. So I'm going to put my email address in the chat right now, and I'd like to encourage everyone to reach out in terms of interest, themes, different artists that in the community as well, because one of the things that we're trying to do at the Office of Arts and Culture is improve our outreach and improve the artists that we're communicating with. It's something we work really hard on, and any more contacts are always welcome, and especially for this project, getting to know the artists in the immediate area who may be interested would be great. And I did see in the chat, I want to acknowledge the Roxbury Love mural, which it would be amazing if Dean 5 were interested in doing a project here. I will share that we are working on contracting him for a project at the Roxbury branch in Nubian Square right now. And he's an incredible artist. And so he may be someone that we can reach out to directly as well. But yeah, so that's just my little, I didn't really talk a lot about the process because I think there's a couple different ways that we do projects, that we do public art projects. And I would really like to know more about what all of you are envisioning for artwork at this site to understand what might be the best process here.
My only question would be, so I built the Adidas box that's now sitting at the park on the basketball court, and it's been there for 5-6 years or so. And I didn't ask anybody's permission from like the parks department or anything. I just felt like the community needed something. You know, we use it to put the grill in and chairs and scoreboard and things like that during different tournaments. And so it's, you know, somebody was talking earlier, I had mentioned about having a place for storage and things like that. And so I know that people are, you know, obviously people want to be paid for their work, but there are some of us that will also do some of the work for free. And I'm wondering what the balance is between like what things we can put money into that, you know, because like everything costs. So whether it's we want more plaques and things that represent, you know, history in the community and things like that, what's the balance between being able to have some of that and, you know, people who are willing to do artwork, not necessarily for free, but for less money than, you know, whatever, you know.
That's a really good question. The calls that I'm talking about are all through the city's Percent for Art program, which is a program with very specific restrictions about how the money can be used. So it's capital funding, which, and I don't want to get too, you know, opaque, which I think happens a lot with the city when we talk about programs. But there are other avenues, there are other grants and other opportunities available. And especially for artists, I don't know if you know that we have an artist resource desk manager, Julia Ryan, who is incredible in terms of providing information about grants, about the business of being an artist, about all these different processes, including permitting and who you need to go to. And so I really encourage you to reach out to her as well with any questions, because she's a phenomenal resource. And she does also have a newsletter. And I'm gonna share our social, if I can remember it correctly, and someone will yell at me tomorrow for misremembering it. But I think it's at Arts in Boston, I'm pretty sure. So you can connect with us that way as well. And you can email me and I can connect you to Julia. So in terms of, you know, there's this big permanent long-term public art process, which can be a little bit intimidating. It goes back to, I want to say it goes back to what Lauren was saying. We're held under that that procurement law from the state and all of that kind of administrative stuff. But there are other options for funding public art. And there are other options available through the Office of Arts and Culture. There are different grants and things of that nature. Thank you, Michael, for adding that in. So yeah, I mean, I don't think anybody wants to tell you not to make art, for sure. Like, we want to support art. Like, let's make more art. Let's get more art into the park, you know, however we can do it.
Mike, I just want to, we still have one more slide, I think, with the development information from Joshua McFadden. Thank you. So this is the information. I just wanted to make sure that we got this to you because I know that we have already encroached terribly on people's times, but I also really appreciate everybody spending this time. Again, it really shows how much this park means to everyone. And I appreciate you allowing us to take a bit more of your time tonight. So Joshua McFadden is planning on April 8th, either 3:30 or 6. One of the, thank you for putting that in there, Shanna, I'm sorry if I pronounced that wrong. But what he was wondering about was for this community, would you guys prefer a 3:30 meeting or a 6 o'clock meeting? So if people have a preference and want to put that in the chat, that would be wonderful for us to help him plan that. And again, we will be emailing out a reminder about this and links to the session. Woo, overwhelming 6 p.m. Thank you guys all for putting that in there. But again, want to just make sure that you guys know that we are doing this, and we're trying to make sure that we get the word out, and we'll hopefully be able to do that more with you all on our team for this. And again, thank you all for your time tonight. If there's anything we didn't cover tonight, anything that you have questions about, thoughts that you have over the coming days, I put my email address in the chat again. Please feel free to reach out to me. Within a week, we're going to try to get this, we're going to get this presentation as well as meeting minutes and notes from the presentation and the video of the presentation onto our website for the project. And we will, so if you want to be able to go back and look at it, if you want to show it to any friends or neighbors that haven't been able to make it tonight, it's also in the chat right now for folks to look at that website. So thank you all again. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
I have a quick question. Sorry.
Sure.
How long is this project? I know you said you plan on starting in August. I just want to know, like, what's the deadline? You might have answered in the beginning, but I had joined a little late.
No, that's okay. We certainly know how it is. So just to reiterate that, I don't know, Mike, if we could hop back to that slide for anyone else who's interested. So right now we are still finalizing all the details, and those details are really going to tell us how long we think it's going to take to build the project. Once we know for sure all of those details, but we're hoping to start this summer. We're going to try to build in, we're going to try to bid, sorry, in spring of this year, start construction probably early summer of 2021. And we think it could be almost a year of construction. It's a lot of work, a lot of courts, field work, the playgrounds. It's just a really big scope. So we're anticipating probably spring of 2022 that we will be opening the park.
Okay, thank you.
If that helps.
Yeah.
But again, once we really get down to the point that we know when all of these things are happening and we have dates associated with them, we'll be reaching out like we have to let people know about the meetings, and we'll be letting people know specifically when these things are happening too.
Great.
That's awesome. And thank you so much for sharing all of this with us.
Absolutely. We're excited to be working on the project. It's really wonderful to work on a park when you really can tell all of the love and care that the community has for a park. It just makes it that much more exciting to work on it with everyone.
Yes, thank you, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.
Thanks, folks.
Thanks. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Lauren?
Yes.
Yes, hi, this is Donald Brown again. Did
Oh,
you?
hi, Donald Brown. How are you?
Okay, did you get a chance to talk to Dennis Wilson at all today?
Oh, not today, no. He and I have been playing phone tag and email tag.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he wanted me to put a little word in for him because, you know, he has a little history of the park itself.
Yes.
I think he discussed with you before in the Zoom meeting. So he just wants to know if he could have some kind of logo of what the history he had of starting basketball leagues up there.
I think it's a great idea. We've been talking to him a lot about the courts in general, so we'll make sure we reach out to him specifically about that.
Okay, sounds good. And you know about the overhang from the bleachers? Wanted like an overhang for shade for people sitting in the bleachers?
Yep, that's one of the
about
things.
that?
Yep, that's one of the things we're looking at as a potential for sure.
Sounds good. Okay, that's all I want to know, Lauren. Thank you for your help.
Oh, absolutely, anytime.
Okay, talk with you later. Have a good evening.
Thanks, you as well.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Lauren, can we get a copy of the recording?
Yes, it will be posted on the website, Louis, after probably within the week. We have to get it formatted, but it'll be posted on our website, both the presentation and the video of it. So if, let me, and also I was just actually typing you back. The project will be publicly bid. So it will be, let me see, I'm putting the link to the project website in there again, Louis, so that you have it to be able to look for that presentation. And the project will be publicly bid, so we'll be awarding it to the lowest responsive and responsible bidder per state bid laws. But I don't know when you were able to join, but we're working with the Mayor's Office of Economic Development and Joshua McFadden. And we're doing, sorry, I feel like I'm losing my voice at the end of tonight. We're doing an information session with him specifically about the Malcolm X project, so that we can make sure that some of the minority and small business contractors that he's working with know about the project, know how to try to become either a GC or a sub on one of these projects. But we're going to be specifically talking about Malcolm X and trying to help get that word out prior to bidding.
So if there's no pre-qualification, are we able to work with you guys in identifying contractors?
You can absolutely do that and absolutely send them our way. That being said, the contractors will need to bid on the project or become become a sub to a general contractor who is bidding on the project, because it does have to go through state bid laws, because we are required to do that. But if you know of contractors, we would love to have that information and to have you help us get information to those contractors for how to either be GCs or subs.
Okay, so the RFQ goes out, or the RFP goes out first?
So it's actually a bid. So it's not an RFP or an RFQ. It's a construction bid.
So anybody then who's in construction should be able to apply.
Exactly. And that's one of the things that Joshua McFadden's trying to do through the Office of Economic Development, is to increase who knows about how to bid. So he's doing information sessions, I think monthly, to make sure that small businesses, local contractors all know how the process works to bid a project, so they know where to look on the city's website, how to get on those listservs. And then when there's a specific project like Malcolm X, we do a specific information session about that, in addition to his general ones that he's doing just to try to increase visibility for projects.
All right, and we're following the bidding regulations.
Correct.
Okay.
But it also does have all of the Boston Job resident policies incorporated into that.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for joining us.
A lot of meetings tonight.
That's what I keep hearing.